This conference will now be recorded.
Today, we're going to talk about Medicare Supplement Replacements. This is a huge part of our industry. You will come across many people in your career that have Medicare supplement policies, and their rates have gone up through the years. So today, we're going to take a look at a little bit about field underwriting, how to quote, and then also how to process business. What do you need to do to process business? Really quick, just a few disclaimers. I'm going to count to 5 in my head and then move on to the next slide. Okay, so what information do you need to begin helping somebody? And I tend to call this the quoting stage. Very, very important. You need to know their zip code and their county. County is so important. I talk about this all the time. Ask the county, ask the county, ask the county, ask the county. Date of birth. Do not rely on their age. Why? Because people tend to have a habit of making themselves a year older and a year younger. Not by any other reason, by default. They just round themselves up or down. So you can be giving them the wrong quote unless you know their exact age as of today. You need to know their height and weight. There are only a couple of insurance companies that do not adhere to a height and weight chart. Everybody else does. So if they're out of the parameters of the height and weight for the particular insurance company that you're thinking about recommending, they're declined right there if they don't meet the height and weight parameters. Tobacco use, you want to include whether or not they use chewing tobacco. That is considered tobacco use. And whether or not they're entitled to Medicare and when it began. Why? Because if they're in their open enrollment, 6 months within their Part B effective date, they don't have to answer any of these questions. What plan do they have now? If a Medicare supplement, you want to ask the name of the insurer, the plan alphabet letter, how much are they paying for it? I like to know how long they had it for. If they're not sure and you're on the phone, tell them to pull out the card and read it to you. If you're sitting in front of them, ask for the card and take a picture of it, visually look at it. If it's a Medicare Advantage plan, you need to know whether or not they can get out of it. So you need to know your SEPs, and you need to know the rules. Obviously, if it's during AAP and OAP, you can make a change. You want to know if they reside with anyone or if they are married. Very, very important. Why? Because some insurance companies will give you a discount just for being married. Others will give you a discount if you have a roommate over the age of 60 or over the age of 18. They'll give you a household discount. Some insurance companies, both spouses have to own it in order for the household discount to apply. It makes a big difference when you're making a recommendation. And then also, I always ask a few very quick knockout health questions. I mean, right out of the starting gate. Questions that I know that if they have these conditions, then I'm not going to be able to help them. And that's whether or not they're on dialysis, diabetes with more than 50 units of insulin, although we do have a carrier that will take more than 50 units. It's kind of a unique client that would be approved with this carrier. Diabetes with heart problems like stents and strokes and things of that nature. Any oxygen use is a decline. Active or recent cancer, recent heart attack, recent surgery, which is kind of an asterisk. You got to dig on that one a little bit. If they just had a stroke 6 months ago, you're not going to underwrite them. And then you want to know if they have any upcoming surgeries or medical testing, or if they're currently in physical therapy. If they have any surgeries planned, like a knee replacement, you're not getting them coverage. Just want to move on. So that's generally what we bring first, is we want to know that. And then you want to move on to the quoting stage really quick. And the reason I say this is because I find it's a lot easier and quicker to find out whether or not you can economically help them first before you get into this long, drawn-out questioning about their medical history. So you quickly ask them some of the gut-wrenching questions. They said no to all of that. They told you that they pay $180 for their plan, and you want to determine really quick whether or not you can economically help them. By the time I've gotten to this part of the conversation, I've already logged into CSG. I've already plugged in their zip code. I have already pulled up their age. I've already started looking at plans really quickly, and I've already made a very quick assessment on whether or not I can economically help them. You want to have that going as quickly as possible. Run the quotes. You want to take a look at some age rate increases. You want to look at historical rate increases. I tend to focus on the loss ratio, and I also take a look at the number of policyholders. The other thing I start to talk about at this point is more than likely they have a Plan F, and I start to talk about that. It's being discontinued January 1 of 2020 for new enrollees. I let them know that the industry trend is moving to the Plan G right now and the Plan N. And then I let them know, that a Plan N could be a great economic value, and that we'll go over some of the differences. Also, if they're on a Plan F and the Plan G is considerably less, which most likely it will be, I use a visual tool to help explain the economic value of paying the Part B deductible. People will respond more with something they can see because they retain 35% of it versus what they hear, which they only retain 7% of it. Visual tools is powerful. And then once you determine that you can help them save money and not compromise their coverage, it's time to move on to the medical part of the analysis. So I'm going to pull up CSG right now.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, here we are. I'm going to pick a random zip code in Texas. We're going to look at a 75-year-old, and we're going to look at a male, and we're going to look at a Plan G. And look here, I did not apply the household discount. We're going to assume this person is single and does not reside with anyone. And then what pops up is all the different insurance companies right here. There's quite a few, and the premium ranges between $140.07 and it goes all the way down to $343.52 for the Plan Gs. Obviously, these are level 2 premiums, but for the most part, between $140 and I would say about, really quick with my eyes, about $167. So somewhere in between. And I got 15 insurance companies to recommend them that we work with in this mix here. So now that I know that I can potentially help them out economically, because I did the analysis, I could potentially help them economically. This is just a quick little visual tool that you can use very, very quickly here. If they have a Plan F, you can plug in what their Plan F rate is over here, the annual rate, and then you can plug in what your Plan G rate is. It's already set up to factor in the fact that the Part B deductible is going to get decreased, and then you can see what their actual true savings are. This is the actual premium savings, but they have to pay the deductible, so it's only fair you add that back in. So the actual overall annual savings is this. And again, this is just an example. You show this to someone that's on the fence, that doesn't believe you, or you email this to someone, they spend about 3 or 4 minutes looking at it, ask a question, are you sure this is the only difference in the benefits? And then there's a little bit of a silence. And then all of a sudden, the next thing is well, what do we got to do to get started? It's very, very, very powerful to do this. Very, very powerful.
This conference will now be recorded.
Now that you've just decided that you're economically able to help them, in other words, you can save them money, now you got to figure out which insurance companies you're going to be able to place them with. And they're all quirky in their own way, the way that they underwrite their applications. And what I mean by that is there are some insurance companies that will accept somebody with diabetes and high blood pressure, and then there's other insurance companies that won't. And it's your job to figure out how to place your clients with their appropriate insurance company that not only will save them the most amount of money, but will also offer them the coverage. It won't decline them. So the first thing that I always like to do is I like to start with the names of the medications, the frequency, the dosage, and the reason prescribed, okay? And you also want to ask when they first went on the medication, because that paints a picture as well. If they recently went on all these medications last month, it's not going to be probable you're going to get them coverage, because that would be a huge risk to an insurance company. Somebody that just got diagnosed with diabetes, high blood pressure, and all this other stuff, and they just went on medication. A new insurance company isn't necessarily going to want to accept that risk just yet. And it'll also give you an idea of their baseline medical conditions. And then what I usually do is I look them up, I confirm the medical use. Sometimes clients confuse which medicine does what. And then also sometimes medicine has two uses, and one of the uses could be a knockout use on the insurance company's underwriting. And here's a good example. Ripinorol, pronunciation not sure. What that does is it treats restless leg syndrome and Parkinson's disease. RLS is acceptable, Parkinson's is a decline. So it's very important that you ask which is which. You want to go through the knockout medical questions on the application. I'm going to show you an example in just a second. And then from there, what you want to do is you want to identify your go-to carriers, your 1 or 2 or 3 go-to carriers that you feel at this point will most likely accept them and are economically in their best interest. Okay, you kind of want to whittle it down. So you go from 15 insurance companies down to 1, 2, or 3. If they answer a yes on the insurance company's application, you can't submit it. This is the easiest business in the world because the insurance company tells you the things you got to ask before you send in an application. And in this business, in the Medicare Supp business, if they say yes, you can't submit the application. It's so easy. Next, you want to really zero in on the medical conditions. Reason being is clients sometimes downplay the severity of their conditions. I can't tell you how many times I've had people tell me that they've just had some minor heart problems, and then we come to find out that they're in congestive heart failure. So, and there's nothing wrong with it. I respect the fact that people need to downplay their medical conditions. I think I would too. In order for me to accept it and move on and kind of get through life. But you need to really ask, as a field underwriter, you need to really ask detailed questions. If somebody tells you that they had cancer, 5 years ago, you want to get details. When were you first diagnosed? When did the doctor tell you you were cancer-free? Because there's look-back periods. And then finally, when in doubt, you can always call the insurance company and get a pre-qualification. It's not an offer, but an idea, and they'll tell you whether or not they'll accept a certain condition or a medication. And then finally, if you feel confident that the client can pass medical underwriting, then you should feel confident to submit the application. We're going to take a quick look at some common uninsurable conditions. COPD, that can be underwritten, but generally it's going to be extremely expensive. Okay, so yes, you'll be able to place somebody with COPD, but no, you most likely won't be able to save the money. COP with oxygen, of course, is going to be a decline. Congestive heart failure, diabetes with complications, diabetes and high blood pressure where the medications are more than 2 and 2, more than 2 diabetes and 2 high blood pressure of either side. Bipolar, schizophrenia, dialysis, kidney disease, cancer diagnosis 2 years or less, cancer-free has got to be more than 2 years. Most injectables, once in a blue moon, you'll come across somebody that takes an injectable for sweating. Their insurance companies will be okay with, some insurance companies will be okay with that, but you might find somebody that takes an injectable for psoriasis. That's $10,000 a shot, and they're not going to approve that person. Rheumatoid arthritis, asthma, where there's 2 or more medications, so 3 with asthma is typically a knockout for most carriers. Diabetes with insulin, I said before, we do have one carrier that takes up to 100 units, but usually when you're on insulin for diabetes, you got a whole slew of other problems, so it doesn't mean you're going to get the person through. Upcoming surgeries, anybody that's got an upcoming surgery, just let them know you'll call them 3 months after the surgery because it's post 3 months when an insurance company will look at them. Any medications for memory, a lot of times they'll tell you, I forget a couple things, so the doctor put me on medicine. Well, what do you take? I take Aricept. Well, Aricept is for Alzheimer's. It's a pretty serious medication. So anything with memory is going to be a decline, and then any medications on the knockout list. And as I said before, when in doubt, review the insurance company's underwriting manual and call for a qualification. So we're gonna take a look at this.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so what I have done is I have taken a photocopy of all the insurance companies that we work with, their medical questions from the application. I have it in a binder. I also have it stored on my desktop so I can quickly reference the insurance companies. And basically, you kind of want to look through, one of the key similarities is you want to look at, and the differences is the look backs. Some insurance companies have lookbacks where it might be 2 years. Other insurance companies might have lookbacks where it's 3 years. So you got to be really, really cognizant about that, is about the lookbacks and so forth. So once I've identified which of my go-tos that I want to work with the client, I quickly look at the medical questions. If there's something I'm not sure about, let's just say that my go-to happens to be Manhattan Life. I think I passed their medical questions, but let's just say there was just something that I was just not clear or sure about. Then I would pull up the underwriting manual. Okay, so here's an underwriting manual. It kind of tells you everything. It tells you how to call, how to do the underwriting, what number to call, I mean, everything. And then it also tells you, most likely these are going to be, or most definitely these are going to be uninsurable health conditions like spinal stenosis. This insurance company puts it down as an uninsurable health condition. However, I know Equitable will accept that. So each insurance company is quirky. It's very, very important for you to spend a little bit of time and look at all this stuff. Here let me get that pen there. Here, diabetes with 50 or more units of insulin is a dead deal. More than 2 high blood pressure medications for people on diabetes. Okay, so things to consider. And then over here, if you take a look, they have other things. Anybody that uses oxygen, more than 2 inhalers. So if you have somebody that's an asthmatic and they're on more than 2 inhalers, this insurance company won't take them. So it's important that you know this, because the last thing you want to do is you want to submit applications that'll be declined. Okay. Here's a list of their uninsurable medications. It says right here, use of the following drugs will result in an automatic decline. Humira, Cogmix, these come up a lot. Tamoxifen. These are drugs that you'll see, kind of commonly, and this particular insurance company does not accept. There's a narcotic little asterisk there. So if the person's on any of these narcotics, this insurance company don't want them. They just don't want them. It doesn't mean you can't find them coverage. It means this particular one won't work for them. Okay, so it's important you know all this. And there's so many different steps you can take to find out. This one talks about the household discount as long as the person is married and residing with their spouse, or they got a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a roommate that's at least 60 years old, they're going to give them a household discount in these states here. So if you're selling in Texas and this person has a roommate that's over 60, well, guess what? They're going to get a household discount. That's a big deal. You need to know this stuff. Okay, this is where it matters for you to be prepared. Being prepared for this means the difference between a good agent and a great agent. Okay, I over time have memorized all this stuff, but if you just take a couple of minutes and you go through the particular different insurance companies, here's the height and weight chart. Person's 5'4", if they weigh 235 pounds, guess what? It's a decline. You wouldn't place them with this insurance company. So very, very important. Only takes a minute to kind of look at this stuff. I'll tell you, looking at underwriting manuals have saved me a lot of heartache and a lot of trouble. And as I said before, when in doubt, call the insurance company's underwriting manual. So now we decided we're going to be able to economically help them. And then we also decided that we're going to be able to medically place them. So we're going to go to our 2 go-to insurance carriers that we tend to work with quite frequently. And I'm just going to pick them up just as an example purposes. I'm not making any suggestions to these 2 insurance companies. They're just commonly known in the agent space. Okay? So the first is going to be Cigna and the second is going to be Aetna. So what we look at is we look at how the rate increases are built into the policy, which are called age rate increases, and they're over here. Okay, so this particular individual looks like on average their age rate increases are going to be about 3%. In the policy below, it looks like almost the same, 2.9%. Okay, so to me they look the same in that area. The next thing we want to look at are the community rate increases. How did this insurance company raise the rates for everybody else in this policy in this region? And this insurance company, Cigna, raised the rates last year at 4.2%. And then Aetna just somewhat recently had a rate increase in April for 5%. And then it looks like in October they did not declare a rate increase. So these two are relatively similar. So how do you choose between the two? Okay, how do you choose between the two? Well, then we go over and we look at the details. The loss ratio. Let me just clear that out. So here, Cigna, it's got 26,000 policyholders, but is operating at an 89.65% loss ratio. What that means is that most likely there's going to be a rate increase sometime soon. Okay, there's no guarantee, but it's just what it means. Over here, the rate increase is only 68%. Obviously, they're working with about a third of the number of policyholders, and that represents why they didn't make a rate increase here. So even though one insurance company is a little bit more expensive than the other, and the client, in my example, will most likely benefit for both, I would explain to the client the differences between these two. I would explain to the client that if you're paying $26 more a month, you are in a plan that's more likely not to increase. By saving the $26 a month, you just have to be prepared that there's going to be a rate increase, and the rate increase history doesn't look too bad. So in this case, I would tell the client to take the risk, go with the lower premium, and just be prepared and accept the fact that in the next 12 months, you might see something as much as between 5 and 15%, hopefully less, but certainly not more in that rate increase. And I would go with this, and that's how I would make the recommendation. And I try to keep it very simple. The other thing you can do in CSG while we're here is there's a condition button you can add. I don't believe this to be factual because it is transposed from third parties. I'm not saying it's wrong. I just don't believe it to be accurately complete. So you can put in the medical condition that the person has. And we've been talking about diabetes with blood pressure. So we're going to go ahead and click that one. And look what happens. It tells you how it reads on the application right here. Okay, so diabetes with any heart condition, including high blood pressure for this state, is not on the application. And then CSG lets you bring up the application really quick in some instances. This happens to be one instance. And you can just quickly run down and look at the medical questions really fast and see whatnot. And see diabetes with hypertension requiring 3 or more medications. So if they have diabetes and they have 2 high blood pressure meds, it's a go. Or if they have 3 high blood pressure meds, it's a decline. So you wouldn't place the business. So what happens now? What are the next steps after this? You've already determined that you can help them economically. You've shown them they like it. You found a carrier that they're most likely to be approved with. Next, you have to do the application. What we recommend is that you do an electronic application. I understand you may be in an area where there is no internet or you have bad cell phone service and you are forced to do paper. But if you can, convert to electronic or do a voice signature, okay? I teach everyone how to do applications. I put the instructions in the group. Anything that you want to learn about, I will absolutely show you. But an e-app or a voice signature is the way to go. If you're sitting with the client, they are the ones that have to click the submit button. If you're not sitting with the client, you can send them an email or you can do a voice signature. Voice signature is the way to go. A phone interview is required by most carriers. Good practice is at the time of application, live connect them right into the carriers. PHI hotline. Obviously, if it's a Sunday night at 11 p.m., that's not a reality. But during normal business hours, these PHI lines are open, and they're open late, and a lot of them are open on Saturdays. And you want to get that phone interview done in real time. Realistically, they last about 15 minutes. Realistically, okay? Very, very important to get that done. Don't leave it up to the client to do it in a couple days. They won't do it. You need to take control of everything. The typical underwriting turnaround, I know some carriers now are trying to do same day, but the typical underwriting turnaround can be generally between 1 and 10 days. Most of the time, the app is issued in 1 to 3 days after the phone interview is complete, and then you are paid on the piece of business. So that's exactly what you want to do. This is what goes into doing the Medicare Supplement application. And then I'm going to end with this. As you know, I always end these little videos with the next steps. If you are part of our network, reach out to us for any additional questions or training. If you guys don't know me by now, I feed off of you. You tell me where you need help, and then I run and create a training video on it. And that's how I get content. And then finally, if you're not in our network, well, guess what? Why aren't you? It's time. We got to talk. We are blessed. In the past 2 months, we have had our inboxes flooded with information and requests from agents. It's just been an amazing period of time. I really feel we offer something that very few out there do. And then finally, if there's any insurance companies that you have seen in this training that you would like to learn more about and you want to see whether or not they could fit in your product portfolio, let us know. My name is Joe. This is my email, and then you can call or text me at 561-276-3280. Get out there, help some people, and be awesome.